At the Museum of Natural Science and History, we seek to share the truths of science without a political, financial, or personal bias. We seek to present the evidence and truly go where the evidence leads. Our mission is sharing the truth of science as it relates to our origin. This article will look at the question, are Christians harmful or evil people? If so, then Christian scientists are even more so, as they of all people should know better. Thus, we will focus on Christian scientists as a representative subset of the Christian community when answering this question. Where did the question come from, you might ask? Richard Dawkins, the former scientist, now evolution evangelist from Oxford University in England, thinks Christians are harmful. He stated, "What a child should never be taught is that you are a Catholic or Muslim child. Therefore, that is what you believe. That's child abuse." Mr. Nye, the science guy from the United States, stated, "The teaching of creationism over evolution could create a generation of youngsters who can't think and will not be able to participate in the future." These and other quotes make it clear that those leading evangelists of evolution believe Christians who do not believe in evolution are harmful. Let's look at this from a science point of view, as those two men claim to know many things about science. Let's look at the evidence and see what we conclude about Mr. Dawkins and Mr. Nye's assertions. We will do this by looking at some scientists from history to see if they were harmful and could not think, to see if their teachings are a form of youth abuse. Johannes Kepler was a German mathematician and astronomer living 400 years ago. He discovered Mars had an elliptical orbit around the Sun. He invented an improved refracting telescope. He was an advisor to the Roman Emperor and King of Hungary, Rudolf II. Mr. Kepler believed in the God of the Bible, believing God created the universe around 7,000 years ago. Kepler said, "We see how God, like a human architect, approached the founding of the world according to order and rule and measured everything in such a manner." Kepler further states that God was the kind creator who brought forth nature out of nothing. Mr. Kepler did great things to advance science. He was respected by his peers. From this one scientist, we already have evidence against the claims of Mr. Dawkins and Mr. Nye. Let's look further. Isaac Newton is best known for the laws of gravity and inertia. He is credited as being the greatest scientist who ever lived. Despite a harsh youth and living through the Black Death plague, he graduated university and did research in mathematics, light, telescopes, and theology. He developed his theory of universal gravitation. He developed his 3 laws of motion and proved mathematically that the same laws did, in fact, apply both to the heavens and the earth. While studying the motions of planets and Earth, Newton wrote, "This is the most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets, could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent being." On another occasion, he stated, "Gravity explains the motions of planets, but it cannot explain who set the planets in motion." He was later elected as president of the Royal Society. These appointments and accomplishments clearly indicate his strong Christian values were very acceptable to the government and science leaders of his day. Sadly, most remember Newton only for his work in the sciences and mathematics and areas of physics. In fact, he wrote far more extensively on God's Word than anything else. He has written specifically on a young earth, a literal 6-day creation, and evidence for a worldwide flood. Louis Pasteur, famous for the pasteurization process used to make our milk products safe, is another Christian scientist. From France, born in 1822, he studied chemistry to earn a master's degree in science. His research resulted in a new branch of science called microbiology, which is a very important area of science today. He stated, "Microscopic beings must come into the world from parents similar to themselves." This discovery was a serious blow to evolution, which requires life to come from non-living matter. Pasteur helped French farmers fight disease, including developing a vaccine for rabies. He developed a vaccine for anthrax in 1881. For all of his work, he was awarded the Legion of Honor, France's highest award. Some pretty awesome accomplishments for a supposedly harmful Christian who said, "The more I study nature, the more I stand amazed at the work of the Creator." William Thomson was the first British scientist to become a Lord, Lord Kelvin. This was for his work on the first transatlantic telegraph cable. He was a physicist and an engineer in the late 1800s. He is remembered for the Kelvin temperature scale, but he also formulated the first and second law of thermodynamics. He did research, taught, and published papers on the nature of atoms, light, sound wave, and electricity. Lord Kelvin was a committed believer in the God of the Bible. He believed that God created the universe and all within it. He was a contemporary of Charles Darwin and publicly disagreed with the ideas of evolution over a very long period of time. Another extraordinary scientist is Michael Faraday. He lived in England during the mid-1800s. Faraday discovered the chemical benzene, which has become very useful in the manufacture of compounds like dyes, nylon, and plastics. He discovered electromagnetic induction, which is the foundation of modern transformers and generators. He is called one of the greatest physicists of all times. He believed in a single creator of all things. In a letter to a colleague, he once said, "Nature is our kindest friend and best critic in experimental science if we only allow her intimations to fall unbiased on our minds." Sadly, in the many years since his death, a great many minds in science have become biased. They distort nature, developing unnecessary assumptions to suit their preconceived notions without realizing it. Science teaches us many great things, but, he said, our science, whilst it shows us these things, should lead us to think of him who hath wrought them. Moving on to the 20th century, we encounter Wernher von Braun, as well as many, many others. Mr. von Braun, originally from Poland, eventually moved to the USA. He is the icon of the space age, taking mankind from simple rockets all the way to the moon and back. He worked on Apollo missions, the Space Shuttle program, the Skylab space station, and interplanetary unmanned travel. He was the first director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. In a letter to the California School Board regarding the 1972 teaching of only evolution, von Braun said, "To be forced to believe only one conclusion, that everything in the universe happened by chance, would violate the very objectivity of science itself. Certainly there are those who would argue that the universe evolved out of a random process, but what random process could produce the brain of a man or the system of a human eye?" He wrote, "I find it difficult to understand a scientist who does not acknowledge the presence of a superior rationality, namely God, behind the existence of the universe." The evidence of Wernher von Braun's life speaks for itself against the uninformed statements of Dawkins and Nye. As a final example, we turn to Samuel F.B. Morse, the co-inventor of the Morse code and a key person in the setup of the telegraph system in the USA. He lived through most of the 19th century in America. A delay in him being informed of his wife's illness, of which she died at age 25, motivated him to find a better, faster way of communication. This eventually led to inventing a single-wire telegraph. On May 24, 1844, a message was sent between Washington and Baltimore, which said, "What hath God wrought?" This was chosen in recognition of Mr. Morse's faith in God, who guided and inspired him. He stated, "The nearer I approach the end of my pilgrimage, the clearer the evidence of the divine origin of the Bible." These are just a few of the many, many scientists throughout history. It continues today. Christian scientists work in virtually all fields except evolution. Evolution has no verified history of being observed and has no evidence of occurring in modern times either. In conclusion, looking only at the evidence, ignoring the evolutionary bias of Dawkins and Nye, we can see how much value, not harm, Christian scientists have brought to the people of the world. This blog was created by the Museum of Natural Science and History. Check out our website at truescience.ca. To support our work, go to the donate page.